Health Wednesday is proudly brought to you by Anusol.
Health Wednesday.
All right, we continue with Health Wednesday today on Power Lunch, and we turn the spotlight on a group of people whose quiet strength often goes unseen. We're talking about caregivers. These are individuals who hold the emotional weight of others while rarely having the space to process their own. The wellness of caregivers, whether in homes, hospitals, or even residential care facilities like Little Eden, is often overlooked. Yet their mental, emotional, spiritual, and even physical health sometimes is critical to the well-being of the people that they care for. So let's speak now to Anne Katsier, CEO of Little Eden, an organization that not only provides care, but actively works to uplift and protect its caregivers. Anne, it's lovely to meet you. Welcome to Power Lunch.
Thank you, and thank you for the lovely invitation to be part of your team.
So talk to me about Little Eden.
Well, Little Eden, quite a unique organization, started 58 years ago, and we work with the profound intellectually disabled. So across all ages, across all racial groups. We've been in existence since 1967, so 58 years.
Sure.
And we have 300 residents within our care. So we are split between two facilities in Edenvale as well as in Buffsfontein. And our residents are probably the most marginalized of society. So when we talk about disability, we often think about the person that is in a wheelchair. Our residents will never be able to care for themselves. Majority of them cannot speak, are incontinent, cannot feed themselves. They are entirely dependent on the 223 carers that we have working for us. So we have one of the highest carer resident ratios of any facility in the country. And we're a unique organization that actually has won the gold standard in terms of benchmarking for our organization countrywide. And our carers are the foundation of what this organization does. So we were started by two amazing people, Domitilla and Danny Himes, that were Italians, that were immigrants that came out to this country in the 1940s, and they had a Bible study, and there was a woman in this Bible study that had a profoundly disabled child. And they saw how being that caregiver of that child was destroying not only their marriage, but the other children in the family.
Of course.
Because what we forget is how much time and energy and money it takes to look after someone that is profoundly intellectually disabled.
They're called glass children.
Absolutely.
Because no one sees them.
Absolutely. And one of the saddest things in our country is that Little Eden and many organizations like ourselves almost become the dustbins of society, because these are people that no one else wants. 71% of our residents are abandoned. So of that 300, over 260 of them no one actually wants. So the carers that we have are the only love, care, compassion that these residents will ever know. And interestingly enough, we always assume that carers are women. In our particular case, men are highly sought after, especially when they come from, when our residents have been disabled as a result of abuse. And a number of our residents were born normal. And as a result of being bashed against the wall, dropped on the floor, and burnt, or an attempt to burn them to death because they weren't wanted. So you now have these male and female carers that are the love, the care, the spiritual guidance. They're the everything for our residents. And that's what makes the difference. And that was why Little Eden was started, to say, when you're a mom, when you're a father, when you're a sibling, and you have someone that has, whether it be disability, whether it be age, but someone needs care, it is hugely emotionally, physically, and sometimes financially draining on that family. And who else does it? And one of the things that we often forget here is that our carers who work with us, they go home after a 12-hour shift and they have to care for their families, whatever their family situation happens to be. And that's where we find it so important at Little Eden, that it's not only about providing the care for our residents, but it's providing the care for our carers so that they can give the best that is possible.
You know, we speak of stories of children who are found burnt or children who are found, in the most horrific violent states. And should they survive, I don't think it's actually connected in my mind where they would go, to whom they'd be given, how they'd be cared for.
Well, I can share with you two or three stories that perhaps put it into context.
Yeah.
So yes, I've just mentioned that, and one that I can refer to is Jason. He's now 32 years old. He was born normal and he was abused to the point of brain damage. So he is now in a wheelchair. He is incontinent. He cannot speak properly. His ability to do things for himself are severely compromised. Mm-hmm. If he had been able to grow up normal, he probably would have been a tall man, 6'2", 6'3", thereabouts. Lovely young man,
sure.
But abuse has resulted in
Yes.
that. We have others that as a result of a motor vehicle accident. One comes to mind. He is now 17. At the age of 8, perfectly normal. His father was drunk. And was involved in an accident. The father and the brother died in the motor vehicle accident. And a result of severe brain trauma, the family no longer wanted him. So he was abandoned and he was placed in our care. So we are the only people that actually know him. And ironically, the court order was put in place that he wasn't able to go to his parents. And the court order recently was lifted so that he could see his family again. And when he came back from seeing his family, we discovered...
they don't come
they don't
you.
Come in.
They come fetch him.
They came to fetch him. So after the court order was lifted, he's been with us for a number of years. We discovered that he'd been exposed to drugs.
Yeah.
He had been exposed to alcohol and to sexual abuse. So we've had to reinstitute the court order against them. We've also have our youngest resident is 3.5 and our eldest is 70. So we're what is known to as a cradle to grave organization. Yes. So residents that come to us, even some of those that have families and this aren't able to look after them full time, we look after them the rest of the time. But there are others, as I said, that are abandoned. So our youngest resident at 3.5, she was born with spina bifida, which is actually not it's a very severe condition in the sense that the person probably won't be able to walk, but intellectually she wasn't disabled. But as a result of the parents trying to burn her to death, she has severe intellectual disabilities now and she is in our care. We have another one that I can think of, Sandile. He was born disabled, and unfortunately in South Africa, especially in rural communities, a number of rural communities believe that intellectual or physical disability is some type of curse or witchcraft.
Yes.
So we'll often try and get rid of that child or hide them. Sandile was locked in a cupboard for 13 years.
Anne.
So by the time he was placed in our care, he now has a psychiatric condition over and above the medical condition of being profoundly intellectually disabled. But the situation that our carers deal with on a daily basis is he constantly wants to escape because and if you hear the sound of keys, he just runs because those keys signified him being locked in a cupboard. Oh. We have another young girl. Well, she's
Hang on, you'll have to give us a moment to process this, please, Anne, because these are real life stories, and
so.
You've got a certain amount in your facilities, but just imagine how many others from cradle to grave who are out there and just not able to care for themselves. So our topic is the wellness of carers. And so far you've painted a very broad picture of just the severity that your carers have to deal with on a daily basis. So we're going to go find out what's happening in the 2:30 headlines, and then we'll come back and talk about the carers themselves.
Absolutely.
Because, obviously without carers, there's nothing that we can do. Each of us in our individual lives, but of course on this level as well. It's 2:30.
Get in touch with Pabi on X at Pabi Moloi. Health Wednesday is proudly brought to you by Anusol.
We continue our conversation about who takes care of the caregivers. And anytime I look around at, situations where people need exceptional care, especially around children, especially around the elderly, and those who are ill. You look at the caregivers and you look at what they're able to do, and you can make a distinct differentiation between somebody who's come to tick off the things she needs to do, stamp the pages she needs to stamp, and then leave when it's her time to go, and the person who gets to know each of the patient's names and understands when the parents come through what the scenario is going to be. And we're talking now to CEO of Little Eden, Anne Kutsia, who's telling us a little bit about, well, so far we've spoken about what your are they patients or residents? So what your residents have had to endure in their lives that have led them to live in your care. But now let's talk about the caregivers themselves. So when you look at somebody and they say they want to be a caregiver, what kind of potential emotional, psychological, personality, who are we dealing with?
I think that's a very good question. If we look at our organization, one of the biggest things that we evaluate, people go, is it education and qualifications and all the rest? Because I think we live in a society where so much is tied to what education and qualifications that you have.
Yeah.
Yes, obviously, as a carer, there are care worker qualifications that we insist that our carers have. But what is perhaps more important is the emotional intelligence as well as the spiritual core of these people. So some of our longest carers have been with us over 35 years. So these are people that have committed their lives to caring for people that are not even blood relations to them. This is, and you might go, well, this is a job. Do we not just tick the box? Do we not say, well, my shift starts at 6, so I better get here at 10 to, and I leave at 10 past? Because that type of person invariably doesn't have the spiritual strength to deal with what they have to face. So yes, I've shared with you some of our worst stories, but some of the others are just birth defects. Someone that's born with Down syndrome, someone that had oxygen deprivation at birth and as a result has been developmentally compromised over their growth, and they haven't developed in the same way. But they need someone that can show empathy, that can show compassion, because this is, you might be dealing with someone that can't swallow properly and needs to be fed slowly. Someone whose nappy will need to be changed forever. They will never outgrow it. So someone who needs to be massaged. So they need to be prepared to have physical skin-on-skin contact, because especially when you're dealing with the aged, or you're dealing with someone that's got disability, very often the aged don't move much. And if I'm not sure if your grandparents are still alive or how old they are, they become stiff, they become frail, they become very sensitive. Now, our residents also age, just like your grandparents, but it means that they need to be massaged to stop things like muscle spasms. They need to just have the physical touch. I mean, why do we go and snuggle and get a hug from our parents? Or if you are married or in a partnership or a relationship and you're just feeling a bit low, you want to go for a snuggle and a hug and maybe just a kiss on the forehead to feel that someone cares. And that's where the carer needs to actually be. So we look for strength of character. We look for that inner core where their personal world needs to be put on hold while they are here. So if they are going through an unhappy time at home, a divorce, a sick child, financial difficulties, these are people that need to be able to delay that for the time that they are caring with this, whether it's at our organization or any other organization that cares for someone else. It requires that compassion to be prepared to look at them in the eye and understand. If I use Sandile as an example, so he was locked in a cupboard and the sound of keys makes him terrified, as do the sight of a man. So while we don't know much about his story, we can assume from his behavior that possibly a man was somehow involved with him being locked up. So we make sure that only women deal with him. But then, interestingly enough, we have other residents that are happier when a man cares for them. The strength of the voice, the guidance. And that's where I want to just touch on for a moment about our male carers, because we always think about the caregiver as being a female. And very much often our society is quite sexist in that regard, where, oh, that's a woman's job. A man is not going to be a nurse. A man is not going to be a carer. And yet men are highly sought after in our environment, because that deep voice, that strength of being able to be held, to lift them in and out of a bath when they need to be cared, when there is going to be a firm rub on the foot or on the leg because there is a muscle spasm. There is a tremendous amount of love and care that can be shown through touch, that can be shown with that gentle eye and the voice. So a lot of our interviews talk more about how would you deal with this situation. We have a resident that has X. As a matter of fact, yesterday we had a meeting with about 11 of our carers. We have a resident who was born normal and at the age of 3 weeks had meningitis, which has resulted in frontal lobe damage. She has autism, she has Tourette's syndrome, which means compulsive swearing. She self-harms, she spits, and
she's now
29. Yes. And the parents are becoming elderly and they visit every week, but they're no longer actually able to look after her.
Yeah.
So we are working with a team of caregivers and we're saying, so how do we stimulate her? How do we keep her active? And in her particular case, she loves to run. So we've had to look at our younger carers that are prepared to run after her. And because tiring her would become part of what's necessary.
Right.
Being able to watch Barney 1 million times because that's what she enjoys.
Right.
So carers have to be prepared to do a lot of repetitive activities over and over again and help and deal with someone that's spitting the food back at you. And those are things that we often forget. It's about understanding the innate characteristic of a carer.
Yes.
And let's be honest, not all of us are designed to do that. We'd be impatient, we'd be irritated, and we maybe couldn't show the love that is so important.
I mean, if you look at motherhood or parenthood, so many people are so excited when their child starts solids because finally, they're not going to smell like sour milk anymore, or when the child is now able to walk because now finally, and when you're working with a resident who will never have that finally, you've got to find something deep down inside of yourself to be able to know that it's going to be repetitive over and over. And you talk about emotional intelligence, which I think is so vital. But then you also talk about spiritual resilience.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about that. And if Little Eden is a faith-based organization.
So the founders, Domitilla and Danny Himes, they're actually now referred to as the servants of God. They were both devout Catholics, and they are actually being put up for canonization by the Vatican. So if it goes for this particular work. So they were devout Catholics. There are chapels on both premises. And while we don't expect any of our residents to be Catholic, it is entirely a Christian-based organization. And we actually work very closely with a group of nuns from India called the Sisters of the Imitation of Christ. And these are quite unique nuns. So not only have they taken the religious order, this is an order that has quite extensive academic qualifications. So we happen to have 3 of them at the moment. Their minimum qualification is a master's in special education needs and occupational therapy. Amazing. They come and spend 8 years with us. And we've been having these nuns coming to Little Eden since since 2010 they have been with us. And what is part about this, it is There is no doubt, irrespective of what faith you follow, faith for people that are believers forms the foundation of what they do. They understand that their life is God's sentence, and ultimately, if we look at the slogan of Little Eden, is we are the hands and feet of Jesus. That's what Domitella believed, that this is an organization where if parents and caregivers or society have let these residents down, they will not be let down here. So we make an undertaking, whether you can afford it or not, if you fall into our parameters, your child, your sibling, your mother will have a home until their death. That is our undertaking and that is our commitment, which is why our organization costs 60 million rand a year to run. Wow. We raise funds for the care of our residents. Do we receive money from the state? Yes, but only about 40%.
Okay.
We have to raise every other cent.
And do residents have to pay?
No, if they cannot afford it, they do not need to pay. For those that can, they contribute what they are able to afford. In terms of actual costs, how much does it cost us? Around 16,000 Rand per month per resident.
Right.
But we are prepared to take in residents. And I said most of our residents that are there entirely for free, and we raise the funds for their care, which is why we very often look at society and communities and say, we look to you because these are the forgotten members of society. These are families that often don't mention that they have a disabled person.
I was going to say, this is your brother, this is your sister,
absolutely.
that nobody talks about.
And I mean, I just think of one resident that we have. She's been there about 10 years. Her mom passed away about 10 years ago, and they're 4 siblings, and none of the siblings want to have her in their home. So they've kind of said, we'll pay you as long as you take her. And she will be with us. She's in her 50s. She'll be with us until she passes away.
So there is something that you can put in your last will and testament.
Absolutely.
Should you have somebody who's a resident and help
Very
them.
much so.
Yeah.
We work on a bequest situation. So if you and your will would like to bequeath, whether it be funds, I mean, we had a car recently that was donated to us that helps with our fundraising team. And we've had a house that was donated to us. We've sold the house and we've got the proceeds. I mean, we happen to have a resident at the moment. He's been there since the 31st of March, 1972.
Oh, my
He is
word.
now in his late 50s, and he is the last surviving member of the family. There is no one else. His parents have passed away, his siblings have passed away, and no one in the family wants him. We are now his curators and his carers until his death. And we will then provide him with that love and care. And that's what carers need to do.
Yeah.
So they share with us what they see. They will say, well, Judy's having a good day today. Or Benela, very, very naughty. We need to deal with it. Or alternatively, we might talk about Melissa. She's struggling. She seems to be down. Someone needs to sit with her, needs to hold her. We need to take her for a walk.
Okay.
Let's put her out there. Maybe we can just pray with her.
Yes.
Those are the things that we require of our carers that is way beyond just the bathing, the nappy changing, and the feeding.
So that act of caregiving that is grounded in faith often will then assist someone's spiritual renewal on a daily basis, but there's also a lot that a carer would need to do for themselves or in conjunction with the organization. And we often hear, take time for yourself, do some self-care. I don't know when, first of all, and secondly, how do you do that?
Well, we have a 3-pronged approach. The first one is that we have what is a program that's called Caring for the Carers. So that might be anything from, so it is an hour a week during office hours. So this is not in your personal time. For an hour a week, we would provide you with an opportunity to debrief, to talk, to go and dance, to just spend time on your own.
On campus
or
wherever you want to go.
Or wherever you are.
Okay.
So that is entirely. We also then have a structured program. So I'll just give, recently one of our residents passed away, which is not uncommon. We have residents, because of their medical conditions, very often have compromised health or shorter life expectancy.
Yes.
So we had a carer that sat with this particular resident as he took the very nearly 2 or 3 days to pass away. So they watched basically the life disappear. So we then provide direct counseling and care on site for that caregiver at no cost. That is part of what we offer, because death is difficult in any circumstances, let alone someone watching someone that is struggling to breathe at the best of times, that is incredibly physically disabled. And let's be honest, when you see the residents that we deal with, sometimes it's hard to believe how disabled a human body can actually be. It's not just someone in a wheelchair. It might be a 30-year-old that is half a meter in length. And that changes our perception of what the human body should look like. So we provide that support, and if they need time out, then that is available. So we are very aware that the care of our carer is critical to the care not only of themselves, their families, but our residents, because that's someone that has to go home and not hit the bottle or drugs or whatever else. They need to actually go home and be whole, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally, to function in their own world. And that is why counseling, support, and care is so important. And one of the things that I've instituted, I only became CEO at Little Eden in November last year. I relocated here from the Western Cape. And one of the things that I have made an absolute undertaking is that my door is open. This is not just you need to speak to your colleague, that they can walk into my office and say, I'm battling. Can you help me? Can you tell me where I can go? And I think knowing that the decision maker is available is also critical.
Huge.
And that's what makes a difference. I came from an environment in the Western Cape where I worked with fetal alcohol syndrome, which is horrific, perfectly preventable environment. But the trauma that carers deal with there is terrible. And we have a number of residents that have FAS as well. But the carer needs to know that turning to alcohol, drugs, abuse, sexual promiscuity, and all the other things that the human being tends to do to deal with their trauma is not necessarily the route to go. We can help you.
This is amazing. CEO of Little Eden, Anne Kutsia, talking to us about who takes care of the carers, the wellness of carers. And in this case, obviously, we've been speaking about carers of residents at Little Eden. But, I know everywhere, every family has somebody who's taking care of somebody else, no matter how severe it is. But there's somebody in the family. And you'll find that there will be another member, the aunt, who takes it on herself, and she knows how to do it, and she does it, and she may moan or the whole way through, but she does it, and it almost becomes the expectation that she'll do it. And I don't know if that's so fair. So in terms of the care we give each other at home, even hospice care that sometimes I forget what that end of life
palliative care.
Palliative care, thank you. That sometimes people would like in their homes. What advice do you have for them?
Okay, well, one of the things that we discovered, so we work with two amazing organizations. One is the Page Project and one is the Sweetheart Foundation. So the Page Project is an organization that helps us with seating of residents in our specialized wheelchairs. So our wheelchairs don't always look normal. They're actually referred to as the Madiba buggies, named by Madiba because Nelson Mandela visited our facility when he was president in November 2002. And he felt very strongly about what we actually did there. So our specialized wheelchairs are referred to as Madiba buggies. So that's so the Page Project helps us with seating, because if you're deformed, your lungs are not necessarily on the left and right with your heart in the middle and your liver at the bottom. So they need to be seated correctly.
Yeah.
And the second element, and don't worry, I am getting to your point here in the moment.
No stress.
And the second element is when you're looking at this, it is how do we provide people that don't have access to our resources to be able to care for it? So we've actually looked at an outreach program. So we work in Diepsloot, one of the poorest communities here around Gauteng, in the impoverished communities around Bellabera and in Garankuwa, where our team, along with the Page Project, will take our old wheelchairs, Madiba buggies, refurbish them, renew them, and go into these communities where there are moms, dads, aunts, grannies looking after disabled and actually provide them with skills.
Yes.
So what type of toys can you make from recycled items like plastic bottles and that type of thing? How can you help them with stimulation? How can you do things differently? Because very often in communities, no one knows where to turn to get the information. And there's always this belief, but I don't have money for a psychologist.
Yes.
I don't have money for this. And that, as I said, where your bread tags that so many schools collect results in the Sweetheart Foundation being able to provide wheelchairs to a number of organizations and poor communities that can actually make a difference. So as a three-pronged approach between ourselves and them, we look at, we have some of the resources just by virtue of who we employ.
Yes.
But in communities, when granny, auntie, whoever is actually battling. And I mean, we've been into Diepsloot, for example, where a woman is carrying her 30-year-old disabled child on her back because she has no other means of getting that child around. This is what we can do.
Yeah.
And we actually reach out to the community. And it's one of the things that we're actually doing on Mandela Day on the 18th of July.
Brilliant.
Is we are actually saying, if you want to get involved and help with refurbishing Madiba buggies, help with helping in communities, contact us and we will show you how the community of Johannesburg can make a difference, not only to people that are far less able than you, but on the very, very special carers that we have within our organization that help out there.
Because the heart's already there, right?
Yep.
The emotional intelligence is already there. Perhaps you need a little bit of education.
That's
or
right.
the right way to turn. And also sometimes that phone call to little Eden to be able to go, whew, today was a lot. And so tell us more about the 18th and how you'd like Power people to get involved with you.
Well, you can either go to our website, which is www.littleeden.org.za. You can contact us on 011 609 7246. And you can obviously donate your 67 minutes. You can donate anything from 67 Rand to 6,700 Rand.
Yeah.
You can donate fabric or money towards fabric, which allows us to refurbish wheelchairs, the funds towards the sponge or the foam that is used in these wheelchairs to make a difference, or you can donate towards the care program that we have for our carers who look after these residents in order to make a difference. And you can also contact Gugu at info@littleeden.org.za. And if all of those are not successful, you can phone me directly. I'm Anne on 082 678 9077. We are looking to you, the community of Johannesburg, because you can make a difference.
Absolutely. I think it is extraordinary work that carers do, and to come every day knowing what to expect and then doing it with grace and with love and with gentleness. I think it's an extraordinary place. So Little Eden, Anne Katia is the CEO. When we talk about the wellness and who takes care of the caregivers, this is a wonderful conversation about holding space with compassion. Thank you for coming to see us.
Thank you so much for the time. It's been a delight to meet you, and just so nice to be able to chat to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much.